So I went to record this last night, and you could imagine how that would have sounded. Now, obviously, I am up in Brizzy, so check out the socials for all the little info. But I do not have my microphone, so if this video sounds like arse, it is not entirely my fault. But day one of Magic Round is in the books, and just quickly, what an atmosphere, what an occasion. It seems to get bigger and bigger every year. I remembered last year how just insane it was, but this year it's on a different level once again. Shout out to the 99.9% of fans who were so good last night from all teams. That's what's so good about this, is you hear all these stories about Caxton Street for New South Wales v Queensland, and as a Manly fan you could imagine playing the Broncos is probably the closest thing you'll get to that sort of environment, but just no one talks about it. It's more just a festival of footy and everyone's getting along. Obviously you have the usual stuff, and I had to whip out the Broncos 2020 spoon on a few occasions on the way home last night, because yes, Manly did lose another one. But shout out to the crowd, shout out to the entire atmosphere, and shout out to Brisbane. I think keeping it in Suncorp is definitely the way to go. Maybe chucking 2 a year so everyone gets a home and away Magic Round. Maybe that takes the prestige away from the one, but I think the NRL could definitely do that. I think it always has to stay in Brisbane. The way the city's set up, the way Suncorp Stadium is as a stadium itself, probably the best in the country, and the location it's in, I don't think you can move it from here. So shout out to the NRL, shout out to the Queensland government in that regard. But for the NRL, if you want your feature game of Magic Round, one of the biggest matches of the year, if you want that to be decided because Dean Mariner gets a little tap on the head, then shout out to you. But for me as a Manly fan, look, I'm obviously going to be the one that's whinging because it's my team. But this is going to be one of the most highly watched games of the year because it's the Friday night marquee game of one of the biggest rounds of the year, and you decide a game like that. And I get it. Tommy got a little tap on the face last week against the Dolphins and they blew a penalty for it. But it just sucks how that was a pretty good game in my opinion, and to lose it like that's a rugby league kick in the dick. But I guess Olakau'atu threw one of the great flat passes all time. So I guess at the end of the day, full credit to the Brisbane Broncos, because while they did get one of the softer penalties of all time, they only had the one chance and they did that set perfectly. Payne Haas returned from the dead like the Undertaker, and Jock Madden, who had a pretty good kicking game most of the night, but he iced that moment. One field goal is all he needed, and from that point on, the Broncos took control of the game. It felt like for most of that second half, Manly were on top, but as soon as it mattered, the Brisbane Broncos stood up, and Manly unfortunately just couldn't hack it in the last few minutes. Didn't take their chances in the end, Manly. They had a lot of opportunities to score, and I genuinely thought they were the better team. Outside that first 10-minute period, where they came out firing and took advantage of a sin bin, that was quite controversial. I don't know, man wasn't square and he gets blown for a sin bin 40 metres out. But I guess that is unfortunately just the call that the referee made on the fly, and sometimes you get them, sometimes you don't. And, you know, I'm sure there'll be a call one day where Manly win off of it and it's going to be a very, very bad call and someone's going to blow up like I am now. But unfortunately, I just think it sucks because any other game I wouldn't care, but marquee game of Magic Round, maybe I'm reading into it, but I guess it's a better performance than what I've seen from the last few years. I will say it was a very winnable game. It sucks that Manly have dropped yet another one. It's been the story of our season, and last night was no different. We've probably been, for the majority of a game, the better team. We just have these moments. Sometimes they're 10 minutes like last night. Sometimes they're longer like the Raiders, and that's what costs us the game in the end. So unfortunately, while this wasn't a lead blowing, this one was definitely a game Manly should have won, and they just didn't take their chances. And that beginning period ultimately cost us in the end. But congrats to Brisbane. They're never losing a Magic Round. Thank God that this was the final game in this fixture. But I will say I'd rather be the team that lost that Friday night main game than the 6 p.m. because the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs, let's face it, have been very impressive this season, having improved a lot. But somehow they blew that one. And the Canberra Raiders, once again, they turned up. That was a classic Ricky Stewart performance. They got 2 tries, very lucky, very early, which is very Raiders-like for some reason it seems to be. But you make your own luck, and they do the tough stuff, and then they had to play for over 5 minutes with only 11 players on the field, and that's when the Dogs capitalised. And for the middle part of that game, the Dogs were certainly on top. But you sort of see this performance a few times. The concerning thing for the Dogs is that was definitely a winnable game. game. I mean, 11 on 13, you got to take advantage, and the Dogs did. But the fact that the Raiders didn't tire, shout out to them. They've been the same team for years, the Raiders, and the quicker these young guys get better, they're going to be a premiership threat. I've got no doubt about it. Ricky has managed this rebuild so well. Every year for the past few years, ever since they lost that grand final, we've been writing them off, and Ricky has always got these guys up and about, and it makes sense why they've re-signed him for as long as they did. Shout out to the Raiders middles. I thought that they were excellent, yes. On paper, it seemed like a bit of a mismatch with the Dogs. Obviously, they've got huge issues around their front row, but the Raiders still went out there and did it. And while they were playing not the best opposition, I think that's going to take some tough beating for another team to claim they had the best win of Magic Round, because at the moment, their Canberra Raiders look like they've got that all wrapped up. But that's day one of Magic Round in the books, ladies and gentlemen. If you're there, let me know how many beers you've drunk. Let me know how you are going. But if you're at home, let me know how it looks on the TV. Let me know if you agree or disagree about my thoughts from last night's game. Smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't yet already, and I'll see you in the next one.